Hello, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I'm Iris, this is Babes. As you can see, I have switched out of my urban rhythms and I am back in my rural rhythms for a month or so. Now we have this cat visiting us, and Romeo is well and taken care of, do not worry. And I am going to talk with you about the astrology of the week ahead. So we are talking about November 25th through December 1st. We're entering December. And as we move through this week, I also really do want to talk about Mercury Retrograde a little bit more generally, just because we literally start the week off with Mercury Retrograde. Mercury goes retrograde on the 25th, so we're coming in, and this is a very potent Mercury Retrograde. And so as we move through this week, we also just want to be mindful, starting the week off, being mindful that, gears are shifting. It is in that kind of right as we enter into a retrograde that we start feeling kind of the start and the stop, and that can absolutely be going on. This Mercury is stationing retrograde at 22 degrees of Sagittarius, okay? And it is going to go back to 6 degrees of Sagittarius, and it's going to station direct on December 15th. And also, I want to talk about that Mercury retrograde, and also the other major cosmic conversation that's happening this week is that we have a fire trine. And so we have our Mars, who is in Leo at around 5 degrees of Leo, trining our North Node in Aries. And then as we move through this week, the Sun moving through Sagittarius is going to come in, and we're going to have a grand fire trine. And so this is a lovely spark for our own creative pursuits, our own creative joy. The North Node is there. It's wanting to bring in a little bit of destiny opening up. This might just be us getting excited about projects. It might be getting excited about something that you want to learn. It might just be leaning into whatever feels like it's passion and just letting yourself feel some of that passion this week. Especially as Mercury is stationing in retrograde, as we're coming into a few weeks period of review and reflection, because that is what Mercury retrograde is about, and this one in particular. And so just knowing that there is also this kind of fire trine energy, that Mars is also talking to the South Node, of course, because if it's trining the North Node, then it is sextiling the South Node, who's in Libra. And so there also could be some supportive one-on-one dynamics that are part of helping us to come into that kind of fire energy. But that Sun is in Sag season, so Sun in Sag is really inviting us to feel some optimism around expanding, around the seeker spirit within us, whether it is, finding something new that you want to take a course in, or going down a couple of YouTube spirals and discovering new passions that you might want to explore throughout 2025. But leaning into that fire energy when you feel it. That Mars is stationing retrograde December 6th, okay? So, and that Mars is going to be talking to this Mercury retrograde as well. So we are going to be undergoing some review of our creative drive, which is what Mars and Leo really helps with. But this week, just allowing the fire spirit seeker energy to be there when it wants to come. Don't press that down. And now I really just want to focus on Mercury retrograde, because that is the other major energy that we're working with this week. And so, as I said, Mercury stations retrograde on the 25th. And this is going to go through to December 6th. It's going to be moving through Sag, 22 degrees back to 6 degrees. And, this Mercury retrograde is really significant because pretty much from the start, okay, but especially next week, so in our astro forecast next week, this is going to be a focus, but just knowing that it's coming, because we're going to be feeling it this week, is that Mercury retrograde is going to come into an opposition with Jupiter, who is in Sagittarius, okay? So Jupiter is in Sagittarius, Mercury is in Gemini. We call this them being in mutual reception, where they're in the ruling signs of each other. And, we have a tendency to think of Mercury retrograde as just kind of this, oh, everything goes wrong, our computers don't work, we're in a meeting and it's not working. And that, full on, that does happen. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen. And this Mercury retrograde, however, is really an opportunity for review, especially with that opposition of Jupiter. And honestly, we're in that opposition. It's wide in the beginning, but we're in it this week. It becomes exact next week. And, you know, it really is potentially showing us how we may have been redirected, how we may have to let go of attachment to the plan that we had, the sense of self that we had, how we thought we were going forward in one direction. And this might be building out of the past several months. This might be a new insight that you're getting, and or something literally might come up that kind of stops the direction that we were heading in, and we literally have to go a different direction. And this is where Mercury retrograde, you know, a retrograde is never bad. A Mercury retrograde happens more often than others because of its location and its proximity to the sun. And we really want to invite that mindful kind of gaze that wants to say, okay, I thought this was happening this way, or I thought I was going this way. If it's not, especially with Mercury talking to that Jupiter, there's most likely a really good reason why we're needing to redirect. And so the resistance, when we resist, when we're super attached to that plan that we had, when we're super attached to what our mind has kind of crafted as the way to go, that's when we're resisting and we're not stepping back, when we're not bringing in the mindful gaze, when we're not opening to the reality that we can co-create. And co-creating means that we have to be present with what we're literally extended into. And that's what the astrological archetypes are showing us, you know, and we're extended into, okay, Mercury are trying to understand, are trying to make sense out of bigger things. Mercury and Sagittarius, you know, Mercury traditionally likes to be really focused on the details. Sag likes to expand into the big picture. So Mercury going through Sagittarius is usually having to kind of change some of its way of making meaning. And now Mercury in retrograde is absolutely saying, okay, I didn't fully understand the narrative. There's a new narrative that's unfolding, and this is a time to reclaim the new narrative. And with Jupiter up in Gemini, Jupiter, associated with Sagittarius, likes the big picture. It likes to understand. It likes abundance. And Gemini wants, when it comes to information, it wants to tend to be more focused into the details. You know, so that's where we have kind of the inverse of the situation of these two. And that Jupiter is retrograde, and it's been retrograde, and it's going to be retrograde past this Mercury retrograde. But that Jupiter up there in Gemini is suggesting that we do need to rework our understanding. There is something that we haven't fully seen. And so now when they come into this opposition, it is really an opportunity to see what it is that we couldn't see before, if we're willing. Okay? And willing here can mean that we don't push through resistance, that we don't just lose our temper, that we don't get too attached to the way that we wanted things to go, because they might not go the way that we wanted them to go, okay? And so it is about stepping back and opening up to that. This Mercury retrograde is also really potent because it is going to square Saturn, okay? And then Jupiter is also going to square Saturn. And this is, again, this is not during this week, so I will talk about it as we get there. And this will be taking us into next week. But the fact that there's going to be this square to Saturn, a Saturn who is direct, suggests that we are coming into reflecting, re-understanding, reinterpreting to something that is allowing our path to move forward. Because that Saturn has moved direct. And Saturn in Pisces, that is connected to our soul path. Okay, so whatever is being worked out in that kind of Jupiter arc and its retrograde in Gemini, on the Mercury and Sag, these, you know, especially with Mercury, it feels more in this present moment. It's trying to understand what we have to kind of reassess. But on the bigger picture, that's Saturn is stationed direct, and the fact that there's going to be a square, that square might say, okay, this isn't going to work out the way I thought it was going to, but there is a different path that's going to open up, and that path is aligned to our soul path, because that Saturn's moving direct. And so this is kind of energy that's building this week, and then it's building next week. It's part of the Mercury retrograde. Then, and the last week of Mercury retrograde, we have got Mercury talking to Mars and Leo. They're in a trine, as that Mars and Leo is then going to station retrograde in December. So there's also something around our own creative drive coming into this Mercury retrograde as well. So there's quite a lot of components to it. But focusing on this week, potentially just wanting to slow down, reassess, and really see, how's your narrative changing? I had a narrative that this is what November into December might be about. I had a narrative that this is what this project or this work project or whatever it is, depends where you have Sag, that this was how it's going to go, and it might be going in a different way. There might be surprises along the way. And so the way that we co-create with this energy is to say, yes, there is a surprise, and there is some path that can open here. And it could also be part of something bigger. It could be part of our narrative of self, and our narrative of self might be going through a rewrite right now. Okay. And this, especially, Pluto just moved into Aquarius. If you had major placements at the 29th degree of the cardinal signs, and or at the 0 to 1st degree of the fixed signs, which is where Pluto has now moved into Aquarius. So those fixed signs are Aquarius and Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo. Then, you are undergoing a shift, because you're still very much in your Pluto transit. And those 29th degree of the cardinal signs, those Pluto transits are ending. They're still ending. Gotta let Pluto get at least a full degree away. And so just recognizing that this Mercury retrograde, it might be part of something much bigger that's helping us to reassess, to reinterpret. And again, it's going to be working with that Saturn. So there is a path moving forward. It just might not be what we expected. Okay. And I'm going to leave it there. That is really it. So that's really it for this week. It's that fire trine. So nurturing the fire, nurturing the spirit, and not moving too quickly or resisting too strongly if and when that Mercury retrograde shows itself, which it usually does. Okay, be well.